I have a saying about investing in real estate. This is the easiest way to identify if your real estate deal is a crap deal on its face. If there isn't room in the deal to hire a property manager, you're not making a real estate investment. You are at best buying a job.
As the value of the dollar decreases, typically those tangible things like the commodities, the real estate, the value in that is going to be...
Hard assets, yeah.
Yes, the hard assets are going to go up.
You have three things that go into the affordability. The price of the home, interest rates, right? Mm-hmm. Current mortgage rates, and wages.
Information presented on this program is believed to be factual and up to date, but we do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as complete analysis of the subjects discussed. Discussions and answers to questions do not involve the rendering of personalized investment advice, but are limited to the dissemination of general information. A professional advisor should be consulted before implementing any of the options presented. Encompass More Asset Management LLC is a registered investment advisor with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and only transacts business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements.
Well, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Talks podcast. We were just talking about dysfunctional government and the current government shutdown as we started, and I think is a great segue into today's topic around real estate and, what are the sort of the pros and cons of investing in real estate as one of these asset classes to have in your long-term portfolio. And I joke about a dysfunctional government, but it's kind of what has made real estate be the asset class that it is, sort of, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so often that, and you've probably heard this, Carissa, people say like, oh, I invest in real estate because we know it goes up over time. I invest in real estate because I can touch it. It's I know tangible. What I've got, I invest in and then there's myths. Like, I invest in real estate because no one can take it away from me.
Yeah. There's a feeling of control around the real estate investment that a lot of people don't necessarily have about like the stock market or other types of investments.
But what's interesting is when you start to peel the hood back and say like, well, okay, real estate, listen, is a big asset class. Mm-hmm. Okay. Cornfields in Nebraska are an entirely different investment than multifamily in downtown Seattle. And that's entirely different than owning a water park in St. George, right? Like, or an RV park or storage units or Section 8 housing in the South, or, projects in New York City, like whatever it is, excuse me, it's all so much different. Mm-hmm. And that creates a lot of different opportunity. But fundamentally at the core, what really drives and is the heartbeat of real estate, in my opinion, is two things. It's inflation, because it is a hard asset. And so, it's kind of, it will reprice in whatever today's dollars are, regardless of how inflated they might become. Mm-hmm. And the second thing is really interest rates in the bond market, which a lot of people will get bored on that conversation and not want to listen anymore. But, I'll keep it simple, right? High interest rates, bad for real estate. Low interest rates, good for real estate, right? I mean, I think people have understood that pattern to this point. And the reason that is because if you're trying to seek a return, say like you're like, okay, well, I'm going to deploy capital into real estate and I expect to get, I want to get an 8% return. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Unless you have edge in real estate, right? You know how to buy a certain type of property and rehab it, develop it, improve it, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a specific kind of business model you do on that. You're probably not getting 8% on most real estate without utilizing leverage. So most stuff you're looking at it and you're like, well, okay, it might appreciate 2-3% a year, but if I can 5X myself on the leverage, right? Now that gives me, 10-15%. And then if I'm paying 6-7% on, my cost of carry on the leverage, well, hey, now I come back with, 7-10% return, right? Like, and so that's what the driver is. So if all of a sudden you do that math and you're like, well, okay, I can get, a return on my capital, let's say, 3-4%, and I'm going to 5X it. It's 20%, but interest rates are 15%. You're still not getting a great return and you're taking on a lot of risk for the leverage. And because of the way
time and energy and all of that goes into it as well.
And then there's risks involved in real estate, right? That I think people don't talk about enough. And so listen, I'm approaching this episode from, I think real estate is fundamentally an investment worthy of our attention, and most people should own it. But there's some risks associated with it that I think people should be aware of. And it's what makes it, not the play, but a play, right?
Just like any other asset class, right?
Just
There's
like
always going to
any
be
other asset class.
a place for it, but there's also things to consider on the other side of that, risks to understand, make sure that it's, utilized appropriately.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think for most people, the way that most people are going to express, hey, so I want real estate on my balance sheet. I want real estate as part of my net worth. Well, where are you going to get the lowest risk and the most utility out of that? Well, most people, you have to live somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this sort of intrinsic value that comes from owning a home, which is maybe it doesn't actually produce a cash flow for you, and someday it plugs a cash flow hole, if you will, right?
Yeah.
So if you own a home and you still have, and listen, and we'll get into this later, insurance, property taxes, maintenance.
Yeah.
After you pay the mortgage off, your housing expense will drop significantly, right? And so the idea is, the whole idea of this is if you buy a home and you issue debt, which is to say take on a 30-year fixed mortgage, and I specifically like the 30-year fixed mortgage, you issue what is like the least favorable kind of bond to own. Well, that means it's typically pretty favorable for the person that issues it, which would be you as the homeowner in this case. And if inflation really runs away from us here, what ends up happening is you get to pay the loan back with inflated dollars. And so sometimes they look at it and they say, well, I borrowed, oh my gosh, you're going to borrow $350,000 for the home, and over the life of the loan, you're going to pay $700,000, 2 times as much. $700,000 is what you're going to pay back, or $800,000 or whatever it is. And it depends on your interest rate. Okay. But so what? Like if in 30 years from now, the normal salary isn't $100,000 a year for a middle-class family, it's $1 million a year. What's $800,000? Yeah. It's not that big of a deal. And that's what people got to remember is you see these big numbers sometimes. You got to think in the context over time. It really becomes not that big. Now,
well, and those dollars are getting cheaper as that loan or as that term goes on, right? So like initially, you're paying more, but then if you can buy it at that good rate, buying that debt at the good rate, it gets cheaper and cheaper every year. So I think something that's important to keep in mind is this is a long-term play. Yeah. It's not a short-term thing.
And remember, you're short the debt, but you're long the equity in the home, right? Yes. You're long the home. So if the home appreciates in value, you capture all of the upside, right? And remember, the whole idea is we don't want to own cash dollars. We want to own assets that just happen to be priced in dollars. Yeah. And so when we are in this secular environment, what drives real estate over time is going to be you deploying a large amount of leverage and pay the mortgage down, right? Like that's it. It's like the simplest play that most people should be thinking about participating in. Now, here's the nuance of it that I need to make sure I cover. I am not saying to everyone, go out and run out and buy a home today, no matter what, because I think my current sentiment and my current framework for investing is real estate actually has quite the headwind ahead of it here the next couple of years. Yeah. Okay. Prices are stretched. There's 3 things that go into affordability, and affordability is important because remember, ready, willing, and able buyers is what makes a market. Matching a ready, willing, and able buyer with a ready, willing, and able seller, right? And so you can't just say, well, there's so many families and there's so many homes, so the gap between them is the shortage in housing. That framework is a load of BS. Okay, so and this is the example I use. Everyone wants to drive a Porsche, or everyone would like to drive a Ferrari. You can't just say, okay, well, there's so many drivers in America, so we need that many Ferraris. Like, well, no, because this is not practical.
It doesn't make sense for everyone. Yeah.
And so, you start with everyone wants to have a Ferrari, but, not everyone can do that. So some people go with a Corvette. Well, not everyone can get a Corvette, so they go with a Lexus. Not everyone can get a Lexus, so they go with a a Toyota. Not everyone can get a Toyota, so they share a car with someone in their family. And not everyone can do that, so they have public transportation, right? Like, so there's this degree of accessibility, and it's not uncommon in other countries that there's multi-generational households or multi-family households. And I think we just see that happen more as a trend in the US, more so than everyone just go completely house broke trying to buy an overinflated asset. And so as the affordability stretch and people can't afford it, you have three things that go into the affordability: the price of the home, interest rates, right? Current mortgage rates, and wages. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think everyone can agree prices are pretty high on homes right now, and we've seen them coming down across most of the country in most major markets. Not a ton, but you're softening.
Somewhat.
Inventories coming online and sitting a little longer. That's usually kind of the first stage. Interest rates lately have come down a little bit, but I don't think they've changed kind of significant regime. We're definitely not going back, in my opinion, to like 4% mortgage rates. And then wages. And so if you say, well, wages that's some other obscure thing, then you're making a bet that the price of the home is going to come down a lot, or interest rates are going to come down a lot. But in order for interest rates to come down a lot and solve the problem, the price of the home still can't go up. So you're making this huge kind of goofy bet of like, well, the problem will get fixed. And so then it creates a tailwind again for the price of the home to improve. And I just don't think that's the current environment we're really in. And I just don't see a lot of incentive for people to move or transact at lower prices or get rid of the real estate. I think a lot of people are well capitalized and don't need to unload their real estate. And so there is transactions that happen because of life circumstances and stuff. But there's a headwind there. And so my kind of thesis here is that real estate probably slow grinds it for a number of years here. Hey, depending on, where you buy, if you get a really good deal, you negotiated something well, and then you kind of sell it, a couple of years, the market's a little favorable and stuff, right? It's kind of plus or minus a little bit. For a while would be my base case here. As wages hopefully just increase and sort of come up to meet, fix that affordability issue, over time. And then kind of that gets out of the way. And I don't know, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. Maybe there's another emergency then or whatever. They come up with something and drop interest rates back to 2%, and it sends real estate on another run. I don't know. What I'm looking at is saying, I think if somebody's ready, willing, and able, they're financially ready to own a home, settle into that kind of life, it's not the worst idea to buy a home and say, in 30 years, I'm going to have paid this off and just own it. And that allows me to move into a retirement phase of life in which I don't have a big housing expense, right? You're hedged against that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Because then you're not worried about the rents continually increasing year over year. You have a little bit more steady expenses because you're going to have more of a fixed income as well at that point in your life, most likely. So it helps with that. Let's
talk about okay, well, what does the world look like if Brandon's wrong here, right? Like, because listen, I'm not always right. In fact, I'm probably not even right most often.
We'll ask your wife on that.
But I would say, like, if you look at the fundamental drivers from a long term, like the things that are going to make this look, and be like, oh man, it was a better deal to rent is, hey, if there is deflation in the system, right? And now that debt becomes very expensive that you did issue, right? Like, and not only that, the price of the house would go down under deflation. So you'd really be in for some pain in a deflationary environment. To get deflation, you have to have Congress, by the way, say, what we're going to do is not spend any more money. We're going to control the deficits. There's going to be no more deficit. We're going to pay off the debt. We're going to,
It just does not sound very realistic to me.
But if that happened,
it's potential. Then,
you would probably be able to look at that and say, well, gee, I wish I was a renter. Also, I think if you're in a market that they institute, capital controls around like rent increases and stuff like that, that causes some dislocations that could, make it more beneficial for you to rent in hindsight. I'm not like, I think aside from that though, generally like most of it would just be short-term noise, right? Like I could be wrong, maybe like, I don't know, like maybe my thesis, maybe homes do go up next year in value. I don't know, like I'm not perfect at this, right?
Yeah.
And so, I could be like, I could be wrong in the short term and, whatever. But I think
overall,
30 years from now, I'm feeling pretty confident in the thesis here. And so the other thing that I want to talk about though is because sometimes people will look at real estate and we've now just made a really compelling argument for like, dude, well, let's get on real estate, man. There's cash flow, there's tax benefits, there's access to crazy amounts of leverage. I just could not get other places. It's, there's stability. There's no volatility to it, right? Like you can't check the value of your home on a daily basis every minute of the day, so they feel like it's less risky, these sorts of things. Well, like let's get past, I'm going to call it the obvious ones really quick. And I'm not even going to get into them. Like you have the obvious risks, right? The toilets and the roofs and the ACs and the water heaters going on, just general capital expenditures, maintenance issues coming up that ends up eating into your profit, right?
Yeah.
Particularly if you have tenants that are hard on the property, whether it's a residential home or an office building or whatnot. Then you've got, your insurance risks, which I think people are starting to wake up to a little bit, which is this, you have this asset, you have debt on it, and you have a lot of liability from you owning a property that people come to, right? Remember, if I'm a common shareholder of Walmart, somebody slips and falls at Walmart, that's like not my problem personally.
Right.
If I own an office building, somebody slips and falls in the office building, my problem personally, right? Like that's, you take on those types of liabilities. So you have to insure things appropriately, and insurance costs are going up significantly.
Well, and as different things are changing, it's changing the insurance marketplace. So I know one thing that a lot of people are recognizing now is fire insurance. There's a lot of companies that are no longer insuring in certain areas because it's now within like the wildfire range or things like that, or it's just making those costs increase more significantly. And so that people are feeling the impacts of that in the overall cost of their home.
Right. If 5 years ago or 8 years ago, you would have said to somebody in our community here in St. George and said, hey, your insurance carrier might drop you, or it becomes wildly prohibitive to own their insurance because they're going to deem you to be in a fire zone.
Yeah.
And so you won't be able to get your home insured anymore. They'd be like, that you're insane.
Yeah. Like that's not going to happen.
But it's happening, and it has happened in our community. Like not a little, like not one or two, like a lot.
Pretty significantly.
And that causes this issue. And now here's the thing is like, no one knew that was coming. It's really tough to forecast that kind of stuff. And so this is the idea though, why you diversify a portfolio, because you don't know when we're going to experience that peril, and you don't, it's really not a peril, but that headwind, and you don't know how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
Now, I particularly think if that gets bad enough, there probably is a way to come up with some kind of technology or new underwriting system to identify more targeted risks, or maybe you take on a certain type of liability. The insurance companies keep a certain type, and so system kind of gets redesigned and can fix and
have to adjust their approach.
Right. Like, yeah. So I don't think it's necessarily a secular thing. It's not like insurance companies are just going to go away, right? Like they got to stay, they got to find a way to stay in the marketplace as an industry. But you could face this multi-year headwind that is potentially very uncomfortable. And if you're in that scenario and you make the tough call and say, well, I'm going to have no insurance, and then something happens, you're wiped out. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to be super careful of that. I think one of the most interesting risks that I see with real estate that I am not hearing people talk about is, and I find it funny that people aren't talking about it, or I find it so interesting because the crowd that tends to like real estate are generally the same crowd that really got worked up last year or during the prior administration when they talked about taxing unrealized capital gains, right? And it's this idea that you can't do that in the U.S. You shouldn't realize tax unrealized capital gains. There is Supreme Court case law that kind of define this and really enshrine that in law. Why it is you can't. However, and the whole idea behind that tax, by the way, let me remind everyone is, hey, there's this K-shaped economy. And the people on the upper end of the K, you guys have too much. And the people on the bottom end of the K, they don't have enough. We're going to take from you and give to them in some kind of, through some variation of social program, right? That's what this
The
is.
whole
Let's
idea
call it
behind
what
it,
it is, right? And so the framework around that all of a sudden is what's the most, like for me, like what's one of the most fundamental things people complain about is I don't have a place to live. I can't afford to live. I can't afford to put a roof over my head. And so I think there's this potential risk out there that there is a way to tax unrealized capital gains in real estate. And simply, it's property tax.
taxes.
I mean, what more is property tax than an unrealized capital gains tax, right?
Yeah.
Because if your property value goes up, what do? They come assess your property and they tax you based upon the value of the property, right? And so at a certain point, you do run the risk. And now this is obvious. I mean, I am going to acknowledge this is a little bit fringe. Okay. This is not mainstream. I don't think this is happening tomorrow. And I don't think it's going to happen in mass across the country.
I do think we have seen this in certain areas like California.
Yeah, we could get there. And so again, if you as you invest in real estate, think through these things.
Yeah.
Is this idea that, they just end up saying, hey, if this is a property owned by an investor, we're gonna give you a really big tax bill.
Yeah.
And the offset of that would be, well, that really sucks for all my renters because I'm going to pass that through to the renters. But you're forgetting that local governments still can put in rent controls, right? And we've seen that in major cities extensively, right? And so if they just say all of a sudden, hey, the tax code is for pushing incentives to encourage behavior we do or do not want people to make, right? Then and think about really what that is, right? We want more development, so we're going to issue tax benefits to companies that will bring their companies here.
Yeah.
So you give a tax benefit. We don't want people to smoke, so we're going to put a tax on tobacco, right? Like that's how the tax code works.
Yep.
So if they say, all these people they own investment real estate, they're all wealthy, by sentiment, right? Not by real measure. I think there's a lot of mom and pop landlords that are not really that wealthy, but anyways, and they say we want to make sure that we can convert this housing and give it to the lower end of the K-shaped economy here. How hard is it for them to say, well, there's this big property tax, and by the way, we're going to put in rent control. So as you feel all these inflationary pressures and as you feel this increased tax bill that you owe the taxes on, you can't raise the rents to. So now it really is offset. All on you as a landlord, and that incentivizes you to say, well, this is really a crap deal. I'm going to sell and do exactly what they're wanting me to do, right? And that I think is that's a tail end risk. And look, that means it's a very unlikely to happen,
right?
But if all of your eggs are in the real estate basket, right, then you get wiped out. And that is why we're talking about 5 different asset classes. Yeah. Right. So that kind of regardless of what might happen, if a tail event happens in one particular asset class, you've got other stuff going on in your financial plan. But that is something that I just don't think is really talked about. But I get it. Maybe it's because it's a little bit on the tail end. Yeah. Right. Nonetheless true. But I think that's what Bitcoin people really, I think if I was going to give credit to somebody on this conversation, it's typically the Bitcoin crowd that talks about that kind of stuff, right? And that's kind of their thesis around some of the Bitcoin stuff. Like, hey, the government can't take this from me. I got my passcodes in my head and I walk across the border. And I think we'll talk about that when we do the Bitcoin episode. Yeah. And I think I'm going to bring Aaron back on to help with that one. If you have, that's really one of the biggest headwinds, I think. But the other nuances that you deal with on real estate is managing the leverage, dealing with the tax. Now, I'm not going to say consequences because there's actually some tax benefits. Yeah, they're definitely. But just dealing with the tax situation, right? Books and records. A little bit more complex. Yeah, an additional tax filing on your Schedule E, most likely. You got to track, basis, expenses. You get there's things you got to do, right? Hey, it's no secret to us. We look at the demographics of this show. We know that a lot of you listening are actually other financial professionals and other investment advisors. We want to go ahead and invite you. If you're looking to do something different in your career, go ahead and reach out. We're always looking to bring on high quality people that understand how to do the planning process, align with our values, and are looking to deliver high value to their clients. Please just go ahead and reach out to us. You can get us on our website, ducharmewealth.com, and we look forward to talking to you. One of the other things to be aware of too, if you're going to invest in real estate as an investor outside of just owning your own home, is property management.
Yeah.
right? I have a saying about investing in real estate, and I hope everyone takes this to heart. And this is the easiest way to identify if your real estate deal is a crap deal on its face. Okay. If there isn't room in the deal to hire a property manager, you're not making a real estate investment. You are at best buying a job. That's it.
That's a really good way to think about it. Because I do hear people talking about, oh, it's too much money to get a property manager. Like, I'll just do it myself.
Congratulations. It's a job then. That's not passive income.
No.
That's working a job.
And they usually get sick of it after a year or so, and then they end up selling the property, and it just wasn't what they expected it to be. So I think going into it with the right expectations, understanding, like, how much is this really going to afford me as an investment, or is it a job? Like really getting that idea.
And look, as with everything, there's the exception, right? Okay. Mom and dad own a home. Their son and daughter-in-law are the tenants out in the casita, right? Okay, you don't need a property manager. And you know what? Maybe you did a refi in the house or something to build a casita so that your, young married kids could live there or something, right? Like, or, you're renting a room out in your home. You may not need a property. Like, there's things, right? Like,
But especially if you're not always, able to be near that property on a regular basis, I think that is when a property manager really comes into play.
What you need to calibrate the deal to, though, when you do the analysis on it, is always, okay, if I wasn't renting this property to, somebody that I'm intentionally subsidizing the deal for whatever charitable reason in my heart.
Yeah.
Okay, what would be the fair market value of that rent be? And what would the fair market value cost of a property manager be? And would this deal still work? Because at some point, right, kids grow up and move out of the casita.
Yeah.
Now, again, if you're looking at it going, but at that time, then, we just want a casita so that, kids can always come back and bring grandkids and visit anytime. And we've got the financial means to do that. Okay, great. That's not really an investment you're making the same way. You're parking dollars somewhere, but it's different, right? I'm talking if you are the person, like a big play that I have seen people do that has really led to some success in their retirement plan is they work a job, they put money in their 401k consistently, right? And a couple times throughout their adult life, they come into some larger chunks of money, whether it's a small inheritance, big bonus at work, a settlement claim on a lawsuit, whatever it is, right? Or you just save money diligently for a period of time, and all of a sudden they had, $25,000-$50,000, and they went and bought like a rental property.
Right. And
then they didn't live off the cash flow. They, just pay the mortgage off. They put some money away in a savings account in case they need to repair it, so they don't have to come out of their own monthly, kind of cash flow. And, and they do that, 2-3 times throughout and so now they come into retirement, they got a good sized 401k that they've saved in. They've got 1 to 3 properties that are paid off or nearly paid off, and, some additional savings, and their home is paid off. And that's a really easy retirement plan to put together, by the way, for people. And a lot of really cool, like legacy things, tax plays you can do, all this kind of stuff. And that's the person I'm talking about, right? When you go to deploy that and you say, hey, I've just got some extra money because I a high income earner, whatever it is, right? Or I got a little inheritance and I want to buy a piece of real estate as a diversifier in my portfolio. First, you got to look and say, hey, is real estate equity going to be more than 25% of my financial assets? That's kind of the first check.
Yeah.
Now, some people might want more, and that's okay. If you're a big real estate believer and you go, hey, I'm okay drifting that number up, right? And maybe somebody's number's 50. Just have an idea in mind. At a certain point, you don't want 99% of your wealth to be in real estate. Okay. That is not diversification.
Right.
And anyways, so do that. But then the next thing to do is that's when you have to analyze a deal and say, okay, regardless of maybe if I'm giving somebody a special situation right now, that's one thing, but I'm still going to analyze this and say fair market value rent, fair market pay a property manager, realistic expectations on maintenance cost, tenant turnovers, all these sorts of things. Because remember, like if you turn over the tenant every single year, right? Because you're always trying to consistently raise rents. And so say you're renting it for $2,000, but your mortgage is $1,700, right? And somebody just goes, so you're making like $300 a month. in what you perceive to be
right.
Yeah.
The profit.
Yeah, I'm going to make it easy, and I'm going to say it was $1,700, not mortgage, but your net operating cost. So you have $300 of actual profit, and you just don't have a renter in there because somebody moved out and it took a month to like market the property. Somebody signed a lease, but they said, "Hey, yeah, we'll move in next month," and you had to like repaint some stuff and have the carpet cleaned or whatever. Like, okay, that's $1,700. You still incurred the $1,700 cost, so that is what 8-9 months. If you put in the cost of cleaning carpets and paint, all of a sudden that's a year or two worth of your profit, gone out the window, right? So because you turn the property over once a year, it takes away all of your profit. So you have to be realistic with how often are you going to turn somebody over, and how often are you really going to be able to raise the rents on these people, because at a certain point people just go, I'm out of here. I can find a better deal. And I have seen, we have a property manager in our office. There's times when you go back and somebody's lease is up and you say, if you stay another year, we'll give you $50 off.
Yeah.
You got a lower rent.
If you've got a good
in certain
renter
markets
in there, a lot of times it's worth it.
Yeah. Like, but that's why, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to do the turnover. You don't have to miss that 1 month of rent that really eats into profits. But be realistic with all yourself. And if the numbers aren't lining up, then you just say, you know what?
Be
like,
willing to walk away.
this isn't the opportunity, right? Now, what's unique about real estate is that it's a very inefficient market a lot of times, right? And this is why people can do so well in real estate. It's the same sort of idea as like small cap stock, right? Like, look, there is a freaking 1,001 analysts covering Facebook stock today. Okay. And is Facebook fairly valued? And, what's the operations of Facebook or Microsoft and what are they doing and blah, 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 blah. It's a very efficient market. Everyone's looking at it. There's probably not a lot of analysts covering some shop in, Thailand that makes sewing machines or something. Right. So it's there's this inefficiency, particularly there can be this inefficiency in small cap emerging market companies, right? There's funds out there and companies that specialize in literally going and finding those opportunities. It's very niche. You got to it requires a lot of expertise. And a lot of times it requires a lot of localized expertise, right? Because what makes an inefficiency in Thailand could be different than Japan, could be different than India, could be different than Norway, could be different than Mexico, could be, and so real estate has that same kind of thing, right? When you've got an inside edge on, oh man, I live in the city and I know somebody that works at the city and they just said that they're, somebody's looking at developing this piece of land over here. So that adjacent piece of land that's for sale, I could buy that. And, as that development goes in, it would increase the value here and then I could build a spec on it. If you have that kind of information, that kind of edge, that is where you make a lot of money in real estate.
Yep.
And that is the opportunity that, look, take everything I've said about there being headwinds in real estate and all this, you throw it out the window, right? Because you got alpha, right? You've got alpha. Okay. Excess return. You've got edge. Okay. If hey, I can buy this property and I've got a relationship with the city council and the mayor told me, gee, they would love to get that property rezoned, but no one else really knows that. And so I'm going to buy this piece of property. I'm going to, I've got an architect friend that's doing plans and he's going to give me a plan and we're going to pitch it to the city council and I'm going to structure this contract so I don't take a lot of risk in it. I'm going to have it locked up, but while it's locked up, I can get the due diligence done and get the city to rezone it. And as soon as that happens, boom, the value, skyrockets. It doesn't matter what kind of minor headwinds Brandon thinks we're facing in the real estate market. You got that kind of edge. You can make some money still in real estate in any market. This is what I tell people in real estate. It's always a great time to buy a great deal in real estate.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that there's always risks in the information that's being tossed around because there could be issues with the rezoning or people the council votes against it or things like that. So it doesn't end up getting
But if you're an expert operator,
yes,
you know how to navigate those things.
True.
Okay.
Very true.
And that's when you that's what it means to operate with alpha though, right? Which is excess return. You have edge. Okay. If you just are hey, St. George is a good market, or I don't know, you're Tulsa, Oklahoma is a good market or whatever, right? Or Little Rock, Arkansas is a good market. I'm going to just buy some rentals there, right? I'm just going to go, I'm this guy's building spec homes. They're good deals. And, his property manager says it's good. I'll just buy through. That's what we call in the investment world. That's called beta.
Yeah.
That means I don't really know much. I know it's okay, but I'm just going to buy, right? It's like when we say buy S&P 500, we're just buying beta.
Yeah.
Okay. Like we're just buying beta. Just like,
Just going
okay,
along
S&P
with the market.
500 is, like stock market goes up. It'd be okay. I don't think it's going to be, particular home run, but like, I just need to put money somewhere. Boom. There it is. I'll buy some townhomes.
Yeah.
That is real estate beta is what it is. That's real estate beta. That's just, you're getting what the real estate market's going to do basically. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Alpha is like if somebody's like, hey, I specialize in picking stocks in dislocated markets in, small countries or third world countries that are emerging markets and whatever, right? That's alpha. There's alpha there. Potentially, right?
Yeah.
It's the same when somebody comes and says, hey, I know this land that I think you could buy and convert the zoning or, get it converted to high density and then not put 30 homes on it, but put 85 homes on it. And if we do that with these plans and this spec and blah, 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 boom, we can make a bunch of money, right? That's alpha.
Yeah.
And if you find alpha, it doesn't matter like what the macro environment is a lot of times, like you still can go with the alpha. I'm talking more about the beta today, right?
Yeah.
It's like, look, you want to own some real estate beta, right? Like this is this whole deep idea around debasement is like, look, alpha is great. And if you have the opportunity for alpha, you typically want to take it. But like we're talking broad and long here. Beta is not a bad thing, right? There's nothing wrong with beta.
Well,
but you got to own the beta. And so like, there's these areas that you can just own the beta.
Yeah.
And boom,
and when we're thinking about it, as far as like tying it back into the debasement conversation again, it's like as the value of the dollar decreases, typically those tangible things like the commodities, the real estate, the value in that is going to be
hard assets. Yeah.
Yes. The hard assets are going to go up, right?
Well, it's because they have an intrinsic value and they're just priced in dollars. So as the purchasing power of the dollar goes down, it requires more dollars to purchase the same hard good.
So like if you had a $500,000 house, and then like 10 years from now, it's worth $600,000. It's not really the value of the home went up by $100,000. It's that it now takes more dollars to buy that same home. Right?
Here's an interesting point on the realization of real estate and why, to what I was saying earlier, you really, really, really need to consider using what would otherwise be considered an imprudent amount of leverage when you're dealing with real estate. That same calculation you just did. If a home was worth 500,000. A couple years later, it's worth 600,000. Value didn't really go up.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to argue that in most cases, value actually goes down. Value, the actual true value of the home actually goes down. And the reason why, and I'm going to use the IRS as my co-pilot in this argument, right? They allow you to depreciate homes.
Yes.
Why does the IRS allow you to depreciate something that just goes up? And the answer is because the actual value of the structure does go down, right? Okay. A home built this year is going to require less maintenance costs in the coming years than a home that was built 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay. So when you buy that asset, you get to depreciate it. You depreciate it for a reason. It's because the value of it is depreciating. Well, Brandon, it goes up in dollar terms. Yes, but not in purchasing power terms. And the way you can verify me being sort of right or wrong on this is go measure the value of real estate in another hard asset. My typical one that I like to point at, and, there's people out there that, I know like David Einhorn, I was at a conference and somebody asked him about, pricing assets in gold, and David Einhorn, one of the greatest value investors like out there, he said, yeah, we don't live in a dollar denominated world though. So it's like a useless
gold denominated.
Yeah. He's like, yeah. So David Einhorn's point was like, well, I don't buy groceries in ounces of gold. So like, it's just like a irrelevant metric, I'm going to disagree with David Einhorn on that, which is like, not maybe the smartest thing to do all the time. Right. But if you go price a home and say like, okay, like, and I did this actually, my family, we bought our house, in January of 2020. All right. And I actually put it under contract January 1st. So I've got a really pure study on this. So you just go take closing price of gold, December 31st, 2019. How did it end? Where did it end of the year? It pretty much tells you how many ounces of gold it would take to buy my home at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
Now, real estate has gone on an incredible run since then. I mean, from a real estate perspective, and I wish I could say I timed this perfectly. It was luck, but I damn near bottom ticked the real estate market before it ran off from COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so, but everyone remembers the last 5 years and goes, man, exceptional. Real estate has really had this great return the last 5 years, you know? That was really a lot of appreciation that happened really fast. And if you just go and you just take, well, how many ounces of gold would it cost to buy that home today? Yeah, man, I think it was like 30% less. So like in terms of ounces of gold, like the value of my home, even though it like gone up a lot on paper in dollar terms, it was down like 30% in value.
Because gold has also appreciated so
gold has
significantly.
And has gold really appreciated, or has the purchasing power of the dollar gone down so much? But here's the thing. So this is the exercises, and I've had this conversation with clients, and I say, so knowing that, if you go back to, you know, if you have a time machine now, you're your old Marty McFly, and you can get in the DeLorean and go back to the end of 2019. Do you take your money and you buy gold, or do you buy real estate? And everyone always says, well, Brandon, I'd buy gold, you know? And I said, hey, wrong answer. And they're like, what? You know, the heck? And I go, listen, you can buy a home in the United States with like 3.5% down. Okay. We're going to use 5% down because it's just easier math for everyone. That's 20 times leverage on your money. So for every 1% in value your home's going up in that time period, your money you put in the deal, your investment is getting 20. It's going up 20%. So home prices go up 2%, 40% on your money, 3%, 60% on your money, right? That's the power of leverage returns.
Yeah.
Now, when you leverage a liquid asset like that, it's very dangerous because you get margin calls, right? Because it went down 1%. Well, you're down 20%.
Yeah.
It goes down 4%, you're down 80%. Right? You are probably wiped out. At 5% down, you're wiped out.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what it comes down to is in real estate, because of the 30-year fixed mortgage subsidized by the government, okay, you can get a crazy amount of leverage that is very, very, very tough and basically impossible to get margin called on and then sit on it.
Yeah.
And you can't do that with gold, right? You can't do 20 times your money on gold. I mean, even futures, if you're doing like 10x on futures contracts, like that's still like, listen,
that's wild.
This week, like if you would have entered that position earlier this week, you would have potentially, based on the volatility in gold this week, you would have been wiped out to zero.
Yeah.
And so you just can't do that, right? And so there is a time and place real estate really runs. However, if you did no leverage in real estate and you're just like, okay, well, I'm just going to cash buy in, you know, end of 2019. Well, in that case, you don't want to buy the real estate. You want to buy the gold.
Right.
Right. Assuming you're Marty McFly in the DeLorean and, you know, everything, you know, and before someone gets in the comments says, well, you know, if you're Marty McFly and have that, you know, you should have bought Bitcoin instead, or Fartcoin, or, you know, yeah, whatever. Right. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, we're Marty McFly with a time machine. This is way cooler things I'm doing than, you know, timing COVID better.
Yeah.
But it just illustrative, right? Like there's this interesting dynamic where like real estate has a lot of opportunity, but you have to use it and deploy it correctly still, right? Like it's not just as simple as I've got a bunch of cash, real estate seems safe, I'm going to put it in real estate. You're not using the leverage in real estate. It's very underwhelming. And to add to that, as a side note, before I forget, one of the worst ideas I have seen investors do, and one of the worst ideas I have seen people pitched and have considered doing, is using IRA money, like a self-directed IRA, to go buy real estate. Yeah. Candidly, and listen, I cannot reiterate this enough. It's one of the dumbest ideas out there. Listen, if you want to use it because you're going to get involved in a big commercial project as a limited partner, I mean, maybe a different scenario depending on the terms of the subscription agreement, right? Like,
it's just so nuanced.
But when you're like, I'm going to use self-directed IRA and buy a rental townhome, you are asking for a world of hurt from the IRS when that goes sideways. And on top of that, even if you say the IRS never comes a looking for you, they never poke holes in all of it, and they, you know, force a tax nightmare on you, you lose access to the leverage and you lose access to the tax benefits. And those two things are pretty much the only thing that makes real estate an interesting investment.
Yeah.
Right? You take those two things away, you've really got a bad asset washed in dog water. Okay. Like, so there is much better things to do with IRA money. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not a big fan of self-directed IRAs, but there's just more interesting things you can do if you're going to self-direct your IRA. I know people and have friends, colleagues that use self-directed IRAs to do, private money lending.
Mm-hmm.
You can use them to invest direct in hedge funds, private syndications. Like there's things that there is a use case.
Yeah.
But the worst use of them is to direct ownership in real estate.
Yeah.
The second worst use case is the gold and silver thing, right?
Yeah.
So
too.
Absurdly foolish. But the nightmares that come from self-directed IRAs in general are really bad. So if nothing else in this episode, like the advice you really, really, really need to listen to from a tax perspective is, listen, if you want to make fancy investments, use it with your not tax sheltered dollars and save yourself a world of headache.
Yeah.
Right? With your tax sheltered dollars and IRAs, keep it simple. You don't want to put that tax benefit in jeopardy.
Right.
So.
Yeah. IRS will come at some point. They'll come knocking. Most likely.
It's very, very tough to get that right and have it be a good investment.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do it, you want both of those things, yeah. Otherwise, anyways. I digress. I'm going to die. I'll pass that.
Yeah. Anyways, I think this was a lot of good information though about real estate on both the positive side of it, and like the pros, the things that you can get out of it, the ways to use it positively, and then also the considerations and the reasons why it may not be the best, or to make sure that you have the right position sizing within your portfolio, and like not having it be everything that you own, right? Like that shouldn't be your only asset.
Yeah.
Just again, like with anything else, but
sometimes real estate is not going to be the best investment,
right?
But also,
and it may
sometimes
not be the right
it is
time.
But sometimes it is going to be the best investment.
Yeah.
It's what is the investment, right? Do you have alpha? Is it beta, right? That's to say, do you have an expertise, or do you have a niche? Do you have, a really particular piece of information other people don't have? Or is it just kind of buying real estate with everyone else?
Yeah.
Those two things are different. And circumstances, right? Like, what is the interest rate environment? What is the interest rate environment projected to be? And all of those things play in. And sometimes real estate is one of the best investment opportunities. It really is and can be. And I don't want people to feel like it's not, but you want to make that investment strategically, and you want to be a long-term investor in that.
Absolutely.
Unless you have Edge and you're an alpha. If you got alpha, world's different.
Yeah.
Most people don't actually have it, but
I was gonna
if
say,
you do,
I don't think that's
the marginal lister.
norm.
But I will say more people have alpha in real estate, right? More people have Edge in real estate than probably any other asset class.
Yes.
Right.
I would agree with that.
So, but it's because of the segmented bifurcated market that does exist. So.
Yeah, non-efficient.
Yeah,
market.
A lot of inefficiency in real estate, and it's because the localized nature of it, right? You can't move real estate from one place to the next.
Also, like the land is
the land, man.
Like it's
that's
the
what you own.
scarcity aspect of it too, and so like you can't just
but
more land. So
that's an interesting thing you brought up, and I thought we were getting close to wrapping, but now I got to talk about that. Scarcity. I hear people say sometimes, there's a saying out there, right?
Yeah.
Invest in land because they're not making any more of that, And it's like, yeah, but it still goes back to supply and demand, right? Like, they're not making any more land in Chernobyl, but like doesn't mean I want to buy the land, And you might sound smart. It's one of those things like, you can say it and like sound smartly. They're not making any more of that,
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, sure. But like, if you were a person being a real estate investor in like the 50s and 60s, you've been like, dude, I'm buying land in Detroit. It just goes up, man. They're not making any more of that. Look at all this demand. Families expanding, growing businesses, more people in America buying cars every year. Man, this is like, I'm just going to make money. They're not making more land in Detroit. I'm going to buy land. And then like before you know it, you're trying to sell it for $1 because you can't, like, you don't want to pay the taxes on it. It's literally no one wants it. So there is still a component of you got to have some longer term time projections. And,
yes.
and again, like that's why if you're a real estate investor and every single one of your deals is in the same freaking spot, man, that's really not that much different than having your whole portfolio like in one company, right? You probably, if you're a big real estate investor, right, you probably want a number of different locations, right?
Different
if nothing else, like
types.
different parts of town. But, you know, like, yes, maybe some geographically different subcategory, you know, like the categories of real estate, right? Like maybe you want to get involved with some storage units. Maybe you want to get involved with some office buildings. Maybe you want to get involved with some industrial. You want to own some single family, some multifamily, right? Like you want exposure geographically across the asset classes to avoid these, you know, with the inefficiencies come also the idiosyncratic risks of localized government saying, yeah, we change our minds. You can't do that. You know, and oh, and by the way, there goes the value of your property, right? And so, you know, just consider that. But yeah, I always laugh at people, you know, they're not making any more land, you know, I'm like, well, okay. Like, wow, you're, you know, technically right. But there's a lot of land in existence that, you know, like no one's done.
And the value of the different types of land.
Yeah, like values change, demand change, and it goes back to demand, right? Like the value of your asset is only worth what somebody else is going to give you for it, right?
Always,
so, So even in a debasement world, somebody still has to want it. You know, so there's some really goofy looking mansions that were like really cool at one point that, you know, it's like you can't just bank on that going up forever because like, yeah, it was really cool to you, but if no one else wants it.
Yeah.
You know, then,
if it's going to be that much, they might as well just build their own exactly how they want it, right?
Well, right. Yeah. There's, you know, and you see that in, you know, high end housing a lot, but anyways, okay. I'll close out on that point, I think, before I get down any further rants. If people are looking at real estate, obviously that's, you know, something we help with at our firm is analyzing those deals and projecting them out and looking at the numbers and understanding, you know, how does it impact your taxes? How does it impact your cash flow? What are the risks you're taking on? Is it going to be too much of your net worth? You know, doing that evaluation and just talking through some of the other, like, you know, intangibles that sometimes people aren't thinking about, like the demographic of the area, what's driving the appreciation, right? Is there businesses coming to town? Is it natural growth? Is it organic? Is it, you know, is it just, you know, stonks go up, you know, like it's economy good, so like people keep buying houses, right? Like sometimes that is what it is, but like, are you building your model appropriately and forecasting? Because of that, we help people understand if it's a good deal or not. And for our people in Utah, you know, we can even help with some of the transactional side of things, you know, as needed from time to time, depending on, anyways. But yeah, we're certainly not anti-real estate. No. We're just all things in, you know, the right places, right time, right deals. And I will always fall back on this, and I think we'll end on this, is it's always a great time to buy a great deal. That is the absolute truth of it. And that's true for not even just real estate, but really any asset class. Investment. It's always a great time to buy a great deal. So that being said, we'll end it here. And what do we have coming up next? Are we doing precious metals next? Or are we doing Bitcoin next?
Precious metals or Bitcoin.
Okay.
We'll see what Aaron.
Yeah, I'll see what Aaron's schedule is, and we'll get. I think we're going to bring Aaron back on for the Bitcoin episode.
That'd be really good.
And talk around that. He's always a good time. So
awesome.
All right, we will see everyone out there. You know where to find us. Bye.